Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to the Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition show. I'm Slim, and here with co-hosts the Colonel and Leah. Leah, are you there? I can't. I guess you, like we said, celebrating Black History, so you're kind of in the dark, but that's okay. That's a good way to celebrate. But Leah is with us, and a guest host, Wesley and Ray. How's everybody? First day of Black History Month. Of course, we should celebrate it all year round, but since this is designated that, and it was put together by Carla B. Woodson, so we'll celebrate it, and we'll make sure that we celebrate the rest of the year. But anyway, we want to come here today, and I think we do this every year at the beginning of Black History Month with our hosts and kind of reflect on, try to bring some attention to our experiences locally here with some of our heroes and sheroes. And, because Black history is American history, it's Virginia history, it's Hampton Roads history, it's Portsmouth history, it's Truxton history. It's, every day we wake up, you heard me say every day we rise is a good day to be alive. Every day we wake up, we're making Black history, all of us. So we want to come here and just talk a little bit about that. Before we get started, I always have a little something, as we talk about Black history, one of the things that we don't hear that much of some of the great things that our youth are doing, and the things that they are doing are they're also creating Black history. So I'm gonna play this real quick, and then we'll get into our panel discussion.
Celebrating all month with our Black History Month FYI. We're kicking things off with two brilliant teens who are changing world history. At 13, Elena Onale McWhorter made history when she became the youngest Black American ever accepted into medical school. She finished high school at 12. She majored in biological sciences at Arizona State University, graduating with honors last December. Smart girl. She's now 15. She's months away from her master's degree and starting med school in the fall. She's also the founder of the Brown Girl STEM, an organization that encourages Black girls to get into science and tech careers.
They're going to save us.
Mm-hmm.
They will.
Yeah.
They'll save us.
But wait, there's more. 14-year-old Virginia high schooler.
Virginia.
My goodness, I wish y'all would write this differently. Virginia high schooler and Ethiopian immigrant Heyman Bekele was crowned America's top young scientist of 2023 and was awarded $25,000 for creating a soap that can potentially treat skin cancer.
Wow.
What did Jesse Jackson say? Keep hope alive. So when you hear stories like that are very seldom publicized, and I'm glad The View did that, it gives you some hope, even our young, at 13 going to medical school, when I was at Norcom, I was just hoping I would march across that stage at 17, and she's going to medical school. So amazing. And one other thing before we get started, one of our guests that we had on not too long ago, Helen Davis, passed away, and we went to her funeral, and Wesley in your family, and we went to her funeral today, and what a great home going for her. And Leah, did you want to say anything about Miss Davis, because you had some interaction with her?
Who, me?
Oh,
Okay, Leah.
Oh, Leah.
yeah. Okay, she can't hear it. Well, we'll go to you, Wesley, since this is interconnected with the Van family.
Yeah, that was my dad and sister. Matter of
Oh,
fact,
okay.
yeah, when my dad and his twin brother were born, Aunt Helen and I think Uncle Arthur were charged by my grandmother, Sarah Van, to keep them. You know, when you in the old days when you had, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 children, the older ones had the duty of taking and having to care for the younger ones. And that was one of Aunt Helen's duties, was to care for my father. They split the twins up. And no, it was Aunt Ruth and Aunt Helen took care of them. Yeah, Aunt Helen was a legend, or is
Yeah,
still to this day, a legend in the city of Portsmouth. She was very um, I can remember as a young boy, you know, when the black family. Speaking of black history, the black family during that time was one of those that created villages, and Aunt Helen was a strong piece of my village because, you know, my mother was young when they had, and my father was in the military, and after they had got married and then separated, in those days, families still maintain, no matter what the relationship might be between two people. But if there was a nephew or grandchild and a child, everybody still stepped in and cared for that individual. And because of her, I got a lot of my fact. She was my foundation, so I stand today proudly to say that that was my Aunt Helen. That Aunt Helen was the one that helped, was part of my village to help me to get to where I'm going. I heard a lot of good talk today about Aunt Helen and having to have known her over the years, and it was so fitting that on the first day of African American history they laid to rest a legend, a true person that had made history. She always pushed you to go. I heard she worked with your father, Slim, a lot, and
yeah,
I even with Mr. Smith. Everybody was a piece of Mount Hermon and a piece of Portsmouth, and we all came together, and they managed to get old Turner and Holly, got them on the got them in the city. They got out Helen on the school board. So yes, she did a lot, and it's amazing. It's not like it was in the 1800s that this happened, young people. It happened just in my lifetime, you know, in 40 or 50 years ago. So we're going to miss her. But I hope that our younger generation will be able to just take that same teaching. And some of us are going to have to be the griot to continue to tell the story of those that were there before us. Because if you don't give them the history, as they want to do in Florida and Texas, you're destined to repeat it.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm glad we, like I said, I'm glad we did that story with her. And it's just like the national scene. It wasn't until much later that people started recognizing the women that were part of the civil rights movement, even back in the 50s and 60s. For a long time, you just heard about, the people that were put out front, but the ladies in those movements were a strong force in what was going on there. And the same was here. Ray, any comments?
Yeah, Jim, good evening, everybody. I too had many conversations with Ms. Davis. She was very supportive of me on my years in school board and council. We talked quite a bit, and she gave me encouragement all along the way, and we talked about many subjects. As she gotten and I was off out of office. We kind of disconnected a little, so I would run into her every now and then. But she was always someone that was very encouraging and that would easily and quickly tell you what she thought and even to compliment you or even tell you what. She didn't like or what probably I shouldn't have said or something like that, but it was very few times of that. But she was mostly in agreement with a lot of things I was doing back in my days on school board and council, because I would talk to her quite a bit.
Yeah. Any other comments on Ms. Davis before we get? And I just like to say, all I can say is that the relationship with myself and Miss Davis, like two generations. Of course, she started out working closely with my dad back there when they were doing their civil rights thing here in the city of Portsmouth, and with the Central Civic Forum, and making sure that they would pick good qualified candidates and put all their energy behind them in order for them to be on council and we have some representation. And then later on, when I got up to a certain amount of age, I had a chance to work with her also, and her daughter, Diane, on the Central Civic Forum. So, and everybody was right. She would tell you exactly how she felt. She wouldn't hold any punches, but she just knew how to do it. She knew how to do it in a way where you want to just tuck your head between your legs and run away. You just took it as a part of something that you could take and learn from it. So that's my take on it. And I'm just so elated that we got a chance to immortalize her on video with Portsmouth Coffee Talk, and had a chance for her to tell her own story. So, yep. So Leah probably is going in the house now. So if she wants to say something later, she can chime in on it. But okay, host. Guest host, where do we start? Let me get Leah back on.
Am I on yet?
Yes, you're on.
Okay. As you all talk about, I was hoping I would get in while you were having the conversation about Miss Helen Davis, because it was under Miss Helen Davis and Miss Lucy Overton that I became actively involved in the community. And so I served on the I was a part of the Central Civic Forum when Helen Davis and all of those individuals, Big Boy Turner and Big Boy, Johnny Clemens, oh my goodness, Lee King. There's so many giants who paved the way for each of us, but it was under the mentorship of Helen Davis and Lucy Overton that they engaged me in the community and let me know what my responsibilities were to the community and how I had to be involved in the community. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful for those ladies, because those two ladies really, really got me started in working in my community at a very early age. And even back then, as my grandchildren sometimes say, in the dinosaur age, in order to serve on the Democratic Committee, you had to run from a ward in order to be a member of the Democratic Committee. And I ran to become a member of the Democratic Committee with the help of Lucy Overton and Helen Davis, and won and became a member representing my ward on the Democratic Committee. So I'm thankful for those ladies and for all that they gave to me, all that they poured into me. And I know that because of what they poured into me, it is incumbent upon me to pour it back into those who are coming behind us.
Yeah, and Leah, as you say, listening to Vernon Crump as he talked today, it started out as all men's
It was
thing, and I can't remember the name he called it, but the name was men's something. And when
Men for Progress.
Men for Progress, and then when they when Helen came in, they had to change the name to the Central Civic Forum, which was a group of all Civic League presidents or Black Civic League presidents. And she ended up being the first woman to serve as president of that group, because it wasn't the norm for the women to be involved to that point where they would be president. So she made some strides there, and that's where she, I think, gained a lot of her respect. A lot of things happened under her watch when she was there. And when she was on the school board, she was there when they appointed the first Black superintendent,
Yes,
Rhonda
it
Edwards.
was. That's right.
Rhonda Edwards. So I mean, it was some things on the program that I didn't know she was involved in. I mean, it was a litany of things. So And some people, just go under the radar. They just do what they feel like they have to do. And that was Helen Davis. So just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure we recognize her and celebrate her life. Yeah, 96, I think it was. So, she put in her time.
98, however old he is. And to
Yeah.
see Vernon Crump and to see all of those individuals who were so instrumental in our growth and our development, to see those individuals out there saluting this lady who gave so much to the city of Portsmouth.
And pretty much
Yeah.
some of those people, some of the last of the people that were involved heavily in that. So,
Exactly.
they passing the torch, and I guess we are here and we have to pass the torch as well because we're getting to that point. But anyway, thanks for everybody for indulging us with that. So, but let's go into our topic tonight. And Colonel, I always go to you, and when we talk about military, but I want to go before the military because I know it was some influences that you had of black people excelling, or black soldiers excelling through the ranks in the military that influenced you. But before that, coming up as a young man in the city of Portsmouth, and then making all those trips in different areas, with your dad being in the Navy and traveling to different places, Hawaii, and never made it to Alaska like Johnny, but but you did make it Connecticut, I believe. But anyway, so what kind of influences that did you see kind of coming up that that sort of helped you, guide you, and say, well, let me stay on the straight and narrow because these people are doing it the right way, and I want to do it the right way as well.
Well, you know what? I had a not the typical career coming up through the ranks because one, I joined the Army as a dental specialist, right after high school. Did my time, got out, went to North State, went to a nursing program where I was. There was only 2 males in our class, me and a guy named Brad Shave, and a white guy from the Navy, ex-Navy. And then so this was at the time where black nurses were not. It wasn't fashionable for us males to be out here nursing. So I graduated there, and when I went to work at Maryview, I was the first black registered nurse to work at Maryview Hospital. And then during that time, I also worked full time during the day and went to school. And worked full time during the evenings and went to Hampton University full time, where I graduated in '84 from the nursing program there, and being the only black male in my class also. So didn't see a lot of us out there because I didn't know anybody. It was just I was a rare bird. So when I went in the Army. And at the time, I think we were about 23% males in the Army Nurse Corps, and it's about 4,500 nurses in the Army. But it was, I had made lieutenant, fast forward, I was a lieutenant colonel when I first saw my first black male colonel. So I'd been in for over 20 something years, almost 17 years before I saw somebody that looks like me that made the rank of colonel. And then fast forward a couple more years, and this was such a rare thing. So when I pinned on colonel, I was only the 7th black male to make 06 in the Army Nurse Corps. The 7th. Yeah, the 7th. And now, we've had a lot more. So I had a chance to open up the doors because I try to mentor the young coming up and just tell the truth and then stand in the door and take a few shots for our young people. Matter of fact, Wesley probably doesn't know, but I remember talking to him a lot of times because when I was a chief nurse of Cadet Command, and we've spoken a few times. And I believe yes. When you were at Hampton doing your thing over there. And this is 10, well, I've been retired 10 years. So this is about 12 years ago. And this is when I don't remember, you might not remember when General Smith was there, head of Cadet Command.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now I was at Tuskegee now. I never went there. I used to come over Hampton to see
Right.
Couple girlfriends I had, but
Of course. That's
big
Black
idea.
history too.
I went there.
There was a van in Hampton that was the liaison with RTC and with the university.
Yeah, that was Fred. His name was Fred Cherry
Yeah.
Van, or Fred
Yeah.
Van Cherry, I think was his name. That's the cousin. That's one of my great uncles.
Yeah. He was a general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a big boy up there. You know, we the Vans, as far as we go, on both sides of the water, it was a group of them. That's who you were talking to over there. I remember well. I thought you were going to say you remember talking to me over at when you were at Maryview Hospital, because my mother worked there. She was a nurse over there as well. And then I remember seeing you there because my mother pointed you out. Actually, you remember Vivian Van that worked there? She was a nurse there in the 80s. She was at Public Health and at Maryview.
Okay.
Yeah, the colonel was busy tackling people, and but
you know, I have to out because I'm the only one.
Yeah, but Colonel, you know, I talk about you often because you know, going in that field of nursing, you know, to me that was Black history as well, because not many Black people were going in that field, but because of the stigma of the name being called a nurse, you know, people had to get over that first, because that wasn't gender specific, but we imagine it that way. So when you going in there, because most of the guys right before when you went in, anybody Black going in, you know, if you didn't want to go in, they drafted you and they were going straight to Vietnam. But you needed people like you, because y'all were on the front lines as well. You know, who attended those people when they got wounded, or who, you know, did all that. So to me, you know, you were making Black history then by going into that field and just rising through the ranks and doing what you did. And I appreciate you. And you know, you're a cuz, but you know, I might be a little biased, but I think, you know, but I think it speaks for itself. You know, your career speaks for itself, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I always said, I tell the young folks now, don't take the easy way out, especially when you're out in the force, either in the military or in the civilian sector. Always take the hardest job out there and do the best you can with the hardest job. And you don't have to, and what your deeds will toot your horn, and you will get to the top no matter what. You'll achieve all your dreams.
And Ray, we talk so often on here how important it is for us to talk about our local Black history, which is rich in itself, and especially to our young folks. You know, you hear about the national figures, that's going to always be there, but we can get lost. I mean, those stories can get lost when we lose people like Miss Helen today, and then some of the other ones that were back there, and nobody continues to talk about them or share that information about them. So it's even more important now when you have a faction out there that's trying to keep us from even reading or studying about Black history. So I guess, you know, and I'll mention this, you know, one of my favorite radio hosts, Joe Madison, passed last night. And I remember he used to always say, he passed last night. The cancer came back, but the Black Eagle, he would always say, you know, when people would call and give us commentary about what was going on, he would always say, well, what are you going to do about it? You know, you can talk and talk. So what are you going to do about it? So I guess it's to the point now, what are we going to do about it to make sure that, you know, our local history remains intact or gets passed down to our young generation? Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we all had our dates and times when we entered the fold as far as, you know, politics and also community activism. And you can remember, you know, the class of 72, and I know Wesley can too, because that was 1 year after he left Norcom, when we had to do what we had to do to preserve Norcom. And that's also the time period that, you know, Dolores being my classmate, when because of a lot of those events, we were involved in. She ran for city council, the youngest person that ever run for city council in the history of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
It was unsuccessful. She did make a decent showing. I think she came in like number 6 or something like that. But she did run, and that was a time period where I entered when we were seniors. I missed my senior class trip attending the state Democratic convention, my first one ever, Dolores and myself, and it was because of her mom's, her Miss Lucy Overton. You know, she was just had such a tremendous effect on my life from high school all the way up until she passed away. My mentor, and she told me long time ago when I went away to school, to Ohio Institute of Technology in Columbus, Ohio. And she told me when I left, when I came back, she actually told me that she wanted to see me. And so I got the word and I went around to talk to her. And she says, we're going to put you on the city council, and so, history, it happened. And so she connected me. She said, you got to be able to listen and open to learn. I'm gonna put you with some mentors, and so some of my earlier mentors, were Senator Lucas and Johnny Morrison and Ken Melvin and Bobby Scott. You name them all. She hooked me up, and I was involved. And ever since then, I've been there. When you think about our ages, and we were afforded the opportunities to know. And I heard Leah mention like Raymond Turner, Dr. Holly, you name so many of them, Hugo Owens. We had the opportunity to work along beside them, and even Mr. I'm having a senior moment here today. Who spoke at the funeral?
Mr. Crump. Mr. Crump.
Yeah, Mr. Crump. I'm sorry.
Vernon Crump.
But I also was involved, in and out of the Central Civic Forum. But all of those folks, we had the opportunity. I know you, Leah, and James, and all of us got opportunities to work alongside them. Dr. Holly, was another one that I worked real closely and mentored me on the city council. And a lot of folks saw us button heads a lot, but we were very good friends and we talked all the time, but he just was so pivotal in showing me, how to make it and how to be effective and what to do, and to keep an open mind and not having a narrow view of race, and what it means to have it mixed support and mixed folks that support you and behind you, and that's whether they on this level it's supposed to be nonpartisan anyway, but we all know how that works. But Republicans and Democrats, business people, CEOs of companies and banks. It was through him and my travels on the city council that I met folks all across the country, and with Charles Whitehurst as well, coming up on the city council, so it is those kinds of folks that were a tremendous effect on my life.
Yeah.
You can't leave out Lee King and Tip Corprew and Johnny Clemens and the thing about it is, you can't leave out Mr. Bowie. Mr. Bowie worked behind the scenes, but he was the money man. He was the man who funded everybody's campaign. He laid low, but he gave the money for everybody's campaign.
Bowie's service station.
That's
and
right.
I think people should know too, especially if you live in some of these neighborhoods, not just the elected officials. I mean, we had people like, and you heard mention of Mr. Muckle, someone that was very instrumental, very vocal. Everyday citizens, Joe Wright, people in different. I'm trying to think some of the other people in different neighborhoods. They probably come to me as the show goes on. But even those people working in the communities that had an impact, that had influence. that politicians went to because they knew the influence they had, and they had to come to those people right, because
Exactly.
these people were seasoned, and they were, some of them were no nonsense, and you couldn't just shoot any kind of, almost slipped there, but you couldn't shoot any kind of bull to them, uh, and think, you're going to get their support. So we need to make sure that, and hopefully throughout the month, we'll keep reminding people, a few Mondays from now, we're gonna do a show with the Watts family. One of Ashley Watts is going to be on to talk about. People don't know how significant they were in the cities and how much they did. So I'm not going to talk, but with Seaview Beach and all that. But so we're going to talk about that. But what do you guys think that, when we were coming up, remember when Helen was on, when we talked to Helen, Miss Helen, and Diane and I were talking about how our parents dragged us to different meetings and to the voting polls, even though we couldn't vote, but they wanted us to experience that. Do you think enough of that is happening now? Maybe parents don't have the time, but sometimes you have to take out the time and start those processes early, because there were times during those periods where I wasn't even thinking about politics, but they had already planted the seed. So at one point, that thing was going to come back into my system, and it did. But I had some periods where I wasn't even, I didn't want to have anything to do with politics. But you think we're getting that kind of, the kids are getting that kind of, I'm not blaming the parents if they don't have the time to do it, but you think it's really necessary for them to continue to do that the way things are today? Anybody?
I think it's very necessary. And working the polls here recently, I've been seeing more parents bringing their children into the voting booth with them, which I think is a good thing. It's a good beginning for children to see what it is required of us as citizens of this nation. And not only that, don't just take them to the voting places, but explain to them the price that was paid to give them the opportunity to vote. They need to know they need to know about the poll taxes. They need to know about people shooting guns to keep folks from going to vote, because we're getting back to that time again. So if they don't know the history, it's incumbent upon us to teach the kids the history of what our people went through just to get the right to vote.
I agree.
That
I
that is a
agree with you there, Leah. I go back to when my grandmother, Mamie Sawyer, my mother's mother, and every year, and I guess I want to say from about 56, 57, 58, she would always go, and this is a story I taught my children. She would go to the poll downtown, and you had to pay your poll tax, and then you had to take the poll test, where
Yes.
they wanted to see civically what you knew. And they would go through, and I thought it was just in Portsmouth, but I found out through Congressman John Lewis, it was happening all over the country. That they would go there after you tell them, she would know who the governor was, who a senator was, who a district representative would know every question. And then they would ask her how many bubbles are in a bar of soap, or how many Rice Krispies are in a box of Rice Krispies. An impossible question. And then they would say, well, Miss Mamie, you failed again. I'm sorry. And they walk away with a tear in her eye and grab me by the hand. And she would say, one day, baby, you're going to be able to come in here and pass this test the way it's supposed to be. And I do remember the first day that I finally got a chance to register to vote. And I had her with me. And I had her by my hand. And she remembered so well that, again, both of us stood with a tear in our eyes, because we understood what it took. You're right, Leah. We have got to teach these children the importance of voting. Was not important in our Black history. They wouldn't be spending billions of dollars today just to keep us from voting or trying to buy our vote. And it looks like, and in essence to the question, Overton, No, these parents are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm gonna put it out there just like that. They at 2 years old, they're giving children. I saw they've got a carriage now with a built-in cell phone holder for a 8 month child. You don't need that. The people that design the programs and the people that have designed these telephones do not allow their children to have a cell phone or be around a computer screen until they're 15, 16 years old, unless their classroom requires it. But as far as having one personally, that tells you a whole lot. When you hear that the people that invented this stuff say no, children are not supposed to have it, but at 6 months old, we got a carriage that holds a cell phone. No, they are not being parents anymore. The cell phone, the social media is raising children today. So do they know about Mamie Sawyer's story and how you had to count bubbles in a bar of soap? No, they don't understand it. So Trump runs out, he gives these same kids those checks, and now they say he the greatest president ever for 30 pieces of silver. We're going to lose the democracy in this country because the parents aren't teaching these children the way it should be. But yeah, and no, they're not. We have got to go back. I took my children when they were 6 months old. I talked to Buddy Strelis, who used to own Haynes Furniture over there in Norfolk. And I was working, being the first black marketing rep for General Electric Credit Corporation. I had to handle some credit business for them. And one day, Mr. Strelis told me this. He says, Wes, you should bring your daughters in here to work with you. Well, they were only 3 or 4 years old at the time. I said, well, they're only 3 and 4 years old. He said, we bring our children in here at 6 months old. And we set them around the desk so that they can get the smell of what the furniture business is all about. They can get the smell of money. They can get the feel. They can feel it. So that, like you said earlier, they all of a sudden they know that this is what they were supposed to do. Aunt Helen, Mr. Savage, Mrs. Overton,
Crump.
all that old crowd would sit there as we were little children and take us to these meetings. They would have us sitting there. We wouldn't know what was going on. It was, you'd see cops when we would be downtown. What was that? When they were trying to take Norcom and we were getting right. We were just starting to fight for what we need. But as a child, we were there. They made us sit down and listen to what happened. I can remember listening to Eisenhower on the television. I can remember that back because they said, sit here, Wes, you need to know this. It might be boring, might be for 3 minutes, but the parents don't do that anymore. They don't. We don't do it. We don't do it.
Eisenhower. That was before I was born. I wasn't born then.
Let me just share with you. Let me share one thing, James. Some almost 30 years ago, I started Sankofa Cultural and Learning Center. And we met with these kids every Saturday, teaching them their history, making them get into the box, the size, the box car that Brown shipped himself to Philadelphia in so they can see what it felt like to sit in this box just for a couple of minutes. I didn't hear you.
No, I was saying, can you imagine that? Somebody mailing
just
himself?
for them to get a feel for it. And I said, you only been in there for a minute. Him being in that box for days, being shipped to Philadelphia, And then when I took my babies the first time to Alabama to go across the Pettus Bridge, that was in 2000. And one of my little babies on the bus, she said, because we taught them the history. We taught them the history before we went any place. We taught them the history of the place in which we were going and what occurred in that place. And we got to the bridge. One of my younger ones on the bus, she was about 4 or 5 years old, she said, Miss Leah, are they gonna take the hose out on us? Are they gonna have the dogs out here for us when we get off the bus? But she had learned what had happened to the people prior to, but then she had an opportunity to walk across that Pettus Bridge and not have the fire hose, not have the dogs there. But then they got to meet the people who were behind the scenes, because it was the people behind the scenes who made it possible for those individuals who participated in the march. They were the people who made the food for them. They were the people who gave them places to sleep. And they called them the unsung heroes. So they got a chance to meet those people who were not highlighted. They were not in the forefront. But if it had not been for them, they would not have been able to cross that bridge. They would not have had the people to cross that bridge.
Hey, and Colonel, I'll go back to what I was saying about the unsung heroes. You know, I can talk about our grandmother, and we called her Mother Dear.
Yes.
And, you know, and I think for most of her time, she worked in white people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
But what she picked up from there, she passed to her daughters about etiquette, you know, how to set a table properly, and all these things she learned. She passed that down, and you know, her daughters, and then her daughters passed it down to her children of how to properly, you know, to do things, you know, not trying to be white, but you know, just learning those things that we normally probably wouldn't pick up. So I just brought that up to say, you know, it's heroes and unsung heroes that we should celebrate all through the community. But yes, we should give recognition to the ones that made policy, that were elected and things like that. But we should not forget these people that were in our lives, in our neighborhoods, that were keeping us out of trouble, that were chastising us when we were trying to get into trouble. That all of that's a part of Black history.
It is.
You know, because without them, none of these other things would probably be possible.
Exactly.
So correct. So correct.
But also, James, I agree with Wesley as far as a lot of young people today. You know, all of us can testify that, you know, our children mimicked, and they do now mimic what they see. And nowadays, and that's rare, the opportunities that Leah, you afforded your children in Sankofa, that's rare. A lot of these kids nowadays never even leave Portsmouth and leave, you know, Virginia. But a lot of what we see now is a lot of apathy. It's a lot of young people being pulled into so many different directions. And you heard me say this all the time. There's just so many different things to pull them in those directions that distract them. You know, my children, you know, also saw how active I was over the years. So one main thing that they remember over anything was voting. And so they've always tried to do that. But nowadays, you know, and it's not it's a small percentage of parents that are actually showing, and you see them. I see them from working the polls too. That had their little kids out to take them with them and bringing them to watch what they're doing. It's a small percentage of parents that are actually doing that today. A lot of them, if you look at all of the rec sports, and you look at, you know, the young men that are having young boys, and they're thinking that, you know, they're gonna be the next pro star, you know. And they start them out as 5, 6 years old, you know, having playing football, basketball, and things like that.
That's
you know,
true.
and that's their only focus is sports. You know, and that's something that, you know, we're plagued with now in a lot of the young men. You know, now don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of them out there, but when you look at the percentages, you know, it tells the story that a lot of there are a lot of young men that are interested and that are working, that are getting involved. But you know what takes them out of it is that a lot of them don't want to learn the hard way, you know, by being mentored or working along beside other folks because of their education and because of, you know, going through college. They feel like, you know, we're the ones that need to step down and get out of the way and let them do it. And so when they get involved in the politics and they get involved in a lot of the local events and things that are going on, activities, you know, they get hit, they get blindsided, you know, by people and things that happen that discourage them from getting involved. And they think it's, you know, too much and not much to be involved in. So overall, I think, you know, the young people nowadays are not as interested as we were when we came up. You know, they just not out there like they should be. There are a lot out there, but on as the majority, they aren't.
Well, I think for years we had a false sense of everything is okay. You
Yeah.
know, it seemed like everything is okay, and it's being proven right now. And it just didn't come up with Trump. It's been like this all the time, but it's just been like I always use the word covert. I mean, it's been kind of under the radar, you know, but it was still there, and by a lot of generations feeling like they've made it or everything is okay. I'm doing well. I have a good job. I got a house, got a car, and everything. But you know, it goes deeper than that, you know, and we're going to find out for sure how deep it goes if we don't pay attention to what's going on.
That's true. That's very true.
You know, Ray, you said something about the distraction. My wife gave me a term that she had read somewhere, and it's called slavery by distraction. And this is the new way that we're keeping ourselves kind of, and young people in particular. What happens with these cell phones and social media? They stay there. They get stuck there, and so they're distracted. You know, it's kind of like the thing that Donald Trump's boy just did with Fonnie Willis, and trying to talk about her life and what she's doing in her personal life, and it was just, let me throw this against the wall and see what sticks.
Whatever I can throw, see if it sticks.
Yeah,
And everything he's throwing is sticking with some people.
yeah, they don't care. I'm gonna throw it up there, and if it sticks, it's good. If it doesn't,
Not to break your thought off, Wesley, but you want to throw this at her, but you got 20 plus women who've accused Trump of sexually molesting them. But this, you want to throw something about this woman having a relationship, but you don't want to say a thing about this man who has 20 plus women who he has molested at some point in time in their lives.
That's slavery by distraction. That's exactly what that is. You sit there, and I'm saying, this man got 91 cases against him, and you just out here dealing with who this lady's running with. That ain't got nothing to do with the case whatsoever. And that's the way this, for lack of a better term, this mega Republican Party is running. You know, in our history, in my family history in particular, one of the differences between Aunt Helen and my grandfather, Lyndon Van, was, did you know that one was a Democrat and the other was a Republican? And I used to sit at Aunt Helen's house or go over to Granddaddy's house on George Washington Highway with Aunt Helen and hear them debate which way they should be going, and to sit at their feet, and you just stood in awe. And what Granddaddy was, he was one of the Lincoln Republicans. Right before, and this is what I want the kids to remember, just before Kennedy got elected, the Southern Democrats did not want him in office because they had this fear that the Pope was going to run the country.
Yes.
He was Catholic. And they got all upset about that. And Granddaddy and Aunt Helen, I mean, they debated that thing, you know. What ended up happening, those Republicans that had the old Lincoln Republicans came to the Democratic Party. The Southern Democrats, the Dixiecrats, went over to the Republican Party and are who they are today. These are the ones. And so the kids need to understand that, you know, the church too was a major factor in our upbringing. You know, you were saying you got chastised by it. I could act up in school, and by the time I got to my house in Mount Hermon, I had already got 3 beatings. Some of it was abusive, I believe. But anyway, we would have gotten, you know, that was that. And so we had what's that word? Shame. We had a word called shame. And that was one thing that we in our history never wanted to do to our families. You know, you talk about Black History Month. Shame was part of that. We had such a strong culture as to who we were because we had to fight to be who we were. Those things that you go back to the beginning when the African slaves came over and they brought the watermelon seed. The women brought the watermelon seed with it, and the watermelon became something that was proud. I have a painting down in my house by Clementine Hunter. And it's a painting of just a watermelon, right? And one of my friends said, "Wes, why you got this watermelon hanging up here?" I said, "Well, you don't know the history. The watermelon was at one point a sign of prosperity for us. It was up until 1870, after we started working in Congress and had and the southern states were given the right to pull it back. They saw that a lot of black women now here in the South, in Atlanta and Alabama, were becoming millionaires selling watermelon. That's why they made it a sign of prosperity. I just learned recently that they had the seeds in their hair when they were coming over. That's how they got them over here. So then in 1870, they started saying, well, that's all they do is eat watermelon and sit on the porch and spit out seeds. And that's stereo. By 1930, they had made it a legitimate stereotype. Big lips, eating watermelon, eating fried chicken. They took what was once our prosperity and flipped it into a stereotype. Now, this is why our children need the church to explain this to them. In Mount Hermon Temple and Ebenezer and Third Baptist, Vacation Bible School was where you wanted to be. Yeah. I think I went to all of them. I would just get me out the house or something. But it was where you learned, and you learned that we had respect for each other. We didn't want. My mama would always say, "Whatever you do out there, don't shame the family."
Wesley, it was don't you act no fool because you represent this family when you go out into the street.
Right. That's right. Now we don't teach that to our children anymore. They wear anything, do anything, say anything. So there's no more shame that's out there. And you've got to have that. That's important as a being as to who we want to be. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, and don't get it missed. Don't take it the wrong way. And I know Wesley feels the same way. When you look at the majority, when you look at the masses, we're talking about a small section of younger folks now that are really, waking up and getting interested and trying to get involved and doing the kinds of things to put them in position to learn and to know and to grow. We're talking about, if you look at the entire human race, or however you want to put it, as far as a blacks, we tend to hold things, and that's another thing that in politics where you can't hold if you want to be effective, because you lose some, you win some, and you live to fight another day. And a lot of folks just don't understand that. They think because maybe you don't support somebody this time, like you'll never support them again, or you'll never talk to them again. And that's the mentality a lot of folks that haven't really have a foundation into government and politics and the community and advocacy and how things work. I say it like this, you don't hold it, but you don't forget, and you make sure that, folks are reminded when the time comes, of the past and things that are necessary to move forward, or to break down some bridges and to break down. Our minds have to stay open and focus on the common goal. And that's for the people and not ourselves.
That's why it's so important to and you said, Ray, foundation, to have a strong foundation on what your history is all about, and the facts and how things and who actually helped build this country. So you can't let the people, like the Colonel calls them, the Confederates, the Confeds, convince you otherwise. If you have a strong foundation and know your history, nobody can convince you otherwise that how they used to say it, well, I don't know if I can say that on Facebook. You know, you can't
Yeah,
you
be
can't
careful
do a
because
certain thing on me and tell me it's raining.
yeah, how about that? Yeah, yeah.
You can
Don't
say
do it.
you can say P.
Okay, I guess
Say P.
that's allowed.
Yeah.
You said it. I don't have to repeat it. But anyway, that's what I meant.
That
And
was
tell me it's raining. You know.
one of Judge Judy's favorite sayings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of Trump's good things to do. And he sits right there on that stage and say, "It's raining, y'all," and he do all up, and they go, "Oh, it sure is, Mr. Trump."
Well,
Lord,
I mean,
Jesus help.
that's all they're doing now. I mean, you know, look at Nikki Haley, you know,
Right.
Oh,
and she's only hanging in there because, you know, hoping that Trump's gonna get all tied up. You know, they're trying to say he's losing it, but you know, he's not losing his
I
base.
want,
He
I
might
want
be
her to
losing
hang
it up
because
here, but he's not.
the
Yeah.
longer she hangs, the more confused he gets, the more upset he gets, and the more money he's going to have to spend. And
Yeah.
that's the less
But
money he's going to have to spend when it comes time for the general election. So
Yeah.
let her hang as long as she wants to hang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
But,
well, you know,
but you know, doesn't it? Isn't this a repeat back when Obama was president? When you listen to black folks talking about what Biden hasn't done
Yes,
for black
yes,
people, you know, and if you look, that's a narrow view. You know,
Yes.
it's all about me. It's all about us. When all of these folks make up, you know, this country and make up this human race, and they have got to get over the fact that number one, and I've said this before, it ain't gonna be another a party between now and November. So you can
right.
forget that.
yeah,
And also we have got to, you know, acknowledge what's already being done. You know, look at all of the Republicans now that are taking credit for the things that Biden has done, like the infrastructure and so many
yes,
other
yes.
things he's done. And they're out with photo ops and standing in front of bridges, taking credit. And some of these commentators are really frying them. You know,
It's about time. It's
they
about
are
time.
now
yeah, they're starting to fry him,
It's
you know.
about
right.
time.
And they voted against all of this stuff,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah,
So we
Yeah,
have
sure
got to
did.
but
keep things in the proper
but
perspective.
I know Colonel believes that you have to just keep repeating it just like they do.
Yeah.
You know, every chance you get, just talk about it. You know, because they use the same strategy they use. They just talk. You know, they can tell lies and just keep repeating it and repeating it,
And becomes
and before you know it, you might believe it. But
yeah.
but you have to stay strong in your convictions and make sure you keep sharing the right information, the true information, the right Colonel.
You're so correct, and that's a Hitler trait that he says you tell a lie long enough and fast enough, and more often you tell it, it becomes a new truth, and that is what Trump does every day. And you'll see it on Fox or state-run TV. They just make up statistics. You know, when I saw on TV the other day, and they was talking about Trump picking this Confederate governor we got here in Virginia, and he says, "Well, Biden is down 40% in the state of Virginia, and Youngkin is up by 40%." You know, it's just like that, and saying that that's why he needs to be picked because he's a moderate and can turn Virginia, and that is a bunch of lies. Those they just make up ratings and stuff like that. But I want to circle back to when we was talking about taking kids to the polls. I think that yes, some parents are doing it, but not enough parents are actually going to the polls, because you can look at the voting rates or percentages for adults in, say, in the city of Portsmouth. I believe it's down and below in the 30%. And so the only power you have is the power to vote. Why would you want to give that up? And then you're going to complain when your child no longer gets a school lunch because the Confederates have cut the budget and there's no longer any money for school lunches. You're going to complain when, if you're on Section 8 housing, for an example, when your copay or the amount that you have to pay goes up, and the amount of dollars that the state and the feds give you for your housing goes down, and you look back and saying, why? Because the Confederates have cut the money for that program.
Right.
You're going to complain when you don't have any health care because they've said this thing, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. And over again, we're going to do that first. And then I'm going to tell you.
But Colonel, tell them with no plan to replace it with.
Yeah, no, but they say, we're going to give it to you later, but we need to do this first. What does that mean?
Nothing.
Yeah,
Absolutely
They're calling you boo-boo the fool.
yeah. That happened 4 years. 4 years of Trump's term. They still don't even have a platform.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
Just get up there and have a rally and ramble on, you know.
Yeah.
Talking loud, like James Brown say.
Mhm.
Talking loud and what?
And
Saying nothing.
Saying nothing.
So I think one of the things, and we got a whole month of Black History Month, and I think one of the things we need to make sure people realize that, you know, you're going to see a lot of people coming out and kind of celebrating Black History Month, some TV shows and things like that, because they feel like it's the thing to do. But right after the 28th, all that stops. So we have to remember that once we started each month, or it should have started last month, we got to continue on, you know, making sure our history is told, our history is taught, and our history is embedded in the minds of our young folks, and need to be going to mind some of our people our age. You know,
Exactly.
Some people our age are sort of, you know, mixed up. But this Black History thing is not a 1 month thing. It's got to be something that's inside of you, that you carry with you and you share with anybody you run into, especially our young folks.
Mm-hmm.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And we come. Go ahead.
You never realize what an impact you can make on a child until when that child is older. And that child today, I was telling you, I was trying to support Black businesses, which I try to do all the time, but I put more emphasis on it when Black History Month comes around. And while there, I ran into the person who provided the service for me was one of my first Sankofa children to join. And then while I was there, another one of the young women who was a part of my Sankofa group came in. And those young ladies are now in their 30s now. But those young ladies, and basically we talk about, they say, oh, you know, Miss Stith, you know, we went to South Carolina to the Gullah Festival, you know, we went to Selma, we went to Birmingham, just all the places that I took them to, that they were exposed to our history. We have to expose our children to our history. When I worked for the Pines Residential Treatment Center, and I was blessed to be able to travel to all 50 states while working for the Pines, marketing on their behalf. When I would see whites in South Dakota at Mount Rushmore, I don't care if school was in, they had their kids at Mount Rushmore, and they were explaining to those kids about what this was. You know, if they went to Great Horse Monument, they were explaining to their kids about what it was that they're seeing. We don't expose our kids to anything. You know, we think we take them to Disney World or to the beach or something. We need to expose them to the history. They need to see their history. They need to be able to feel that history. And you got to be there in order to see it and feel it. It's okay to read it in a book. It's good. But you reinforce it when you can take those kids to those places. I see a lot of people getting money for youth organizations. Don't just teach our children basketball and do a little bit. Plan some things. We have a lot of historical places nearby. You don't have to go as far as Alabama or to the Whitney Plantation in Louisiana or to Selma, Alabama. There are places nearby, historical places, had a major impact on African Americans. You have places right here. During the month of February, every Saturday, Emmanuel Church has something called the Porch Talk. At 1 o'clock on every Saturday, it's $5 to get in. And every Saturday, they're discussing some aspect of our history. Take your children down to the marketplace, the farmers market on Saturdays. You have individuals there who are portraying Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Wilson,
Wilson.
Clarissa Davis, who escaped the Underground Railroad. You got history going on in downtown. Take your kids, let your kids meet these people, get to know these people, to hear their story, hear the stories that they have to tell. Take your kids to Emmanuel Church. Let them see the benches that the slaves built. Let them see the area where they went underground to get to the water in order to get to the ship, how they had to go through the sewer lines in order to get to that ship, in order to head to freedom. Take your children there. Let them see. You know,
and just like us coming up. Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying that there's so much history right before us. And I bet you one thing, if we go to Emmanuel's Church on a Saturday, it's going to be more white folks there than black folks. And that's every time I go to any of these events, that's what I encounter.
Well, they need to be there. They need to be there, but we need to be there too.
We need to be present and accounted for. They're offering the history. They're offering it at a price that's you pay $100 for sneakers. You can pay $5 to go and hear your history. I'm sorry.
Right,
but every Saturday at Emmanuel Church, they call it Porch Talk. At 1 o'clock, it's only 1 to 2, I think it is. Take your children down there. Let them hear the history. Let them see it for themselves. It's here for us. Take advantage of it.
The knowledge of Black history is not just for us. It's for those to better understand us. And then I can just, we're winding down.
Let me do this one thing real fast. Like last Sunday, they had Sanctuary Row. The Virginia Opera performed Sanctuary Row, which was based upon the writings of William Stills. William Stills, he wrote the history of each of those individuals who came through the Underground Railroad. 800 people lives he was able to save. And they showed that history. I tell you what, I was really amazed and I was happy. Black folks packed that opera out last Sunday. It was a beautiful thing to see. And to hear those stories that they shared on Sanctuary Road. It was a beautiful situation.
Yeah, and I can say this, and it's so important for our young people because I can only speak for myself. When we were coming up, now you might have heard of it, but how many of us just knew that Jeffrey Wilson was just the name of that housing project, that Outer Bible was just the name of that housing project? You know, it was just a name to us. That was named. We might have heard about it, but we really didn't know the real history until we got older. That these people, they were named after significant people that made contributions to the city of Portsmouth. So that's why I'm saying it's so important. You can miss that. You know, you can miss that. And people, these places that are named after people. And now I like the fact that they're putting markers on certain areas.
Yes.
To make sure that that's a permanent history or permanent place where you can go and read about the history of some of these places.
The markers there. You got to put the information out there.
Well, hopefully that's a start to get you interested, and you have to take it further to do your research. Okay, we winding down there. Any last comments from concerning the beginning of Black History Month and how important it is?
Yeah. I think that Black History Month is I remember when it was Negro History Week. Okay. But I think Portsmouth in itself has such a rich history. And it goes back to 1607. And this is what the kids kind of need to understand. Portsmouth is one of the oldest cities in the country. And they need to know that where they're from, it's not about all gang banging, that people built this thing. They need to know, like you're going to have Ashley Watts on there, how he started Safeway Cab Company because he saw a need where the black or the colored sailors at that point could not get to Norfolk. And so one night he just started taking them over there. And his wife, too, Miss Madeleine, said, well, you could been all night long. Blah. She started stuffing $100 bills in her hand. She said, well, baby, wherever you been, you need to go back. But we need to know where this stuff comes from. 1607. You know, that city, what was it, in 2007, they celebrated the 400th celebration. It's not many cities that can say that. But Portsmouth is. And so the history that's there. You need to talk about Admiral Cuffy. He was a
Thank
black
you.
sailor
Thank you.
that was around in the
Yes.
1600s and early 1700s. We need to talk about that. Yes, we needed DeSantis. Yes, Scott in Texas. We need to know our history. And it's
Amen.
not going to make children are not going to feel bad about learning their history. What they have learned, both black and white, is that you can come from something based on just how we did out of slavery. We were no more than cattle and pigs being
That's
counted.
right. That's right.
But as you look at us today, as they said, Aunt Hannah became one of the first blacks to sit on the school board. You look at Ray, where he came from, Slim, Leah running the program, the Colonel sitting there as a registered nurse. That young black men need to understand we need some more of them as well. But we have got to teach that. And the white folks understand it. They feel proud
understand it.
because their children have grown up in integration. We didn't. Okay, but our grandchildren, great grandchildren are coming up one and the same, and they sitting there beside each other. We sat behind them. We did
That's
have
right.
the advantage sitting behind them because if I'm sitting behind you, I can learn who you are. You sitting up front, you ain't looking back, so you don't know who I am. So you need to know my history as well. So yes,
Amen.
boy, go
Amen.
ahead on and do that thing. Go back to 1607 and teach them. If we don't teach them, there will not be an election in 2028. I promise you that. We will not have to worry about it because King Trump said he's going to be king for the rest of his
Forever.
life.
Forever.
You
Forever.
trust me on that one.
Forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Ask Russia about it.
Anybody else?
As we wind down, I just want to reinforce there is an event going on at the Portsmouth Public Library. I think that's on the 17th of a Black History program going on. It will be Aisha McCullough, who's a Norcom graduate, will be performing at the Portsmouth Library, as well as don't forget the Porch Talk at Emmanuel Church. Support the history of Emmanuel Church. Such rich history there. So take your children out and let them see some of these people who are betraying people from our past. Teach your children, people. That's all I have to say. Teach your children.
Mm-hmm. Teach them, Lord.
Teach them.
Teach them.
Anybody else? Last comments?
No, after Reverend Van finished,
Reverend Van.
after he preached,
You
I
you
think
mean
it's all said and done. Let's dismiss.
you mean Erwin Waters Jr.?
That's who
Not
I learned
everybody know
from.
who. Not everybody know who that is, but he
I know who he is.
used to be the pastor of
We all know.
Mount Hermon Temple.
Mount Hermon Baptist.
That's who taught me.
Yes, it shows. But then, anyway, thanks everybody. We appreciate you, and thanks for coming on. Wes, Colonel, Leah, and Ray. Thanks for coming on, and a great discussion. And we'll continue to celebrate Black History Month to the 28th, and then we'll continue on, celebrating it, and making sure we share information that we know it's going to be important to our future.
Exactly.
Yes.
So thanks everybody, and have a great day. There's no football game on, Colonel, so I don't know what we're going to do. We might have to watch Lifetime or something like that.
Oh Lord.
Or maybe LSU and
I'll make it.
South Carolina again.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good night.
Ooh.
Good night.
All right.
Good
Take
night,
care.
guys.
Take care.